But a whole cult in business of people who can claim the credit for reduction in cost, but never get the blame for lost opportunities. So it's a completely asymmetric way of measuring a business activity. Any fans of Roger L. Martin here? As he said, any idiot can cut costs. It's not difficult to do. The trick is to do it in a way where your customers don't notice. And I would argue one of the reasons I mentioned those family-owned businesses at the beginning is that with PLCs, customers are increasingly noticing. They're increasingly finding dealing with large organizations fundamentally psychopathic. You know, the entire focus is around efficiency, not the quality of a long-term relationship. Anyway, and one of the points I'd make about metrics is that really good brands have metrics which are all of their own. Now, if you're an individual, I hope that all of you in the room have slightly different metrics or definitions of success to the person sitting next to you. But fundamentally, some brand metrics should be unique to the brand, because that's what makes your brand different from your competitor's brand. And that's what makes your customer base different from your competitor's customer base. But this is a wonderful point, which is, you've probably heard the phrase, what gets measured gets managed. You've probably heard it attributed to Peter Drucker, who never said it, and you've probably heard it said by someone in finance really approvingly. The origins of this phrase, first of all, Peter Drucker never said it. Secondly, it was intended as a criticism. That this was a criticism of what's known as quantification bias, which is you think important what you happen to be able to measure rather than measuring what's really important. There's an Einstein quote, which is, not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. Broadly speaking, what it actually says is what gets measured gets managed, even when it's pointless to measure and manage it, and even if it harms the purpose of the organization to do so. Now, when you think about it, if you have everybody pursuing the same metrics, what you do is you effectively create red water competition, where everybody is pursuing exactly the same thing. But the way we often do marketing is we only define the payback of marketing to the extent that it obtains a very narrow objective that we've defined in advance. Most marketing works in multiple ways. It makes you more famous. It changes the weather. People have now heard of you, so they come to you 6 months later, whereas if you hadn't done the marketing, that wouldn't have happened. You know, and that's the reason why I'm not a direct marketer, which is I always thought that it was too narrow in its aspirations and too strict in its idea that the only things you're allowed to do were things you could immediately prove over the short term. And then the bastardized version of this, I would argue, is performance marketing to a large extent. Secondly, the bottom of the funnel is the thing you should focus on first. Because if the bottom of the funnel isn't operating efficiently, if you're not converting, if no one's coming in to see Ed Sheeran, there's no point in doing top of the funnel activity, because all that will happen is it will just encounter the bottleneck you still have lower down. So I'm totally in favor of optimizing bottom of the funnel conversion as the first thing you do. The problem I have is when people get fixated on it to the exclusion of absolutely anything else. It's a bit like there's no point in widening a road if there's a really badly phased set of traffic lights 300 yards further on, because all you're doing is just moving a traffic jam to a different place. It's very difficult to do without a fundamental cultural shift in how people think of a business and what it's for. Because most people, since the shareholder value movement took hold, most people think the purpose of a business is to make a profit. None of you in the room even question that. Now, the Austrian School of Economics, interestingly, saw business not as an efficiency competition. They saw the purpose of a business as being a discovery mechanism. The businesses that focus exclusively on short-term profits over the medium to long term are actually less profitable than those businesses which have some other objective and see profit as a byproduct of the pursuit of that objective. What it does is it basically creates a lot of cost-cutting activity, the hidden cost of which is destroying a lot of opportunity. So one of the first characteristics you'll see is that marketing spend gets cut and R&D spend gets cut, because in the short term, those things look like an inefficiency. Looked at more widely, they're the reason a business exists. That Peter Drucker actually said, since the purpose of a business is to find and keep a customer, the only valuable activities in business are marketing and innovation. Everything else is a cost. Now, a human interaction has an extraordinary effect on people's brand perception, far more than lots and lots of money spent on kind of impersonal communication. And yet for most of these companies, the call centre is not treated as a business and relationship growing opportunity, it's treated as a necessary evil.